Well, I had a perfect story for this morning because I had a 17-year-old son who was supposed to take the SAT test. And he's a new driver, so he heads off early, afraid of the highway, so he goes to the back roads. He calls up with about 20 minutes to go before the test and says, I forgot my entrance form. No picture, no ID, nothing. So I'm about 1 mile from the exit, the first exit available, to stop and help him. And I get this phone call, just turned my phone on, and I pull off the exit and I tell him, I'll go get it for you. Stop back at the house, come back to the college where he's about to take his test. He gets the form with 2 minutes to spare. Now I thought, well, I'm playing with this because I'm wide open, not listening to podcasts, not listening to you, not listening to anything in the morning, just saying, let's see what the morning will bring. And it all worked out perfectly without a moment to spare.
Because what the morning brings is perfect timing, always, when you are in the receiving mode. So in your cork floating, absence of resistance. So his impulse came just at the right time. He realized before it was too late. He knew who to call because you are, in many regards, and nothing wrong with it, a well-known path of least resistance for him.
Always.
It's all right. It's all right. That's what cooperative components are. His timing was just right. Your timing was just right. That's that sweet spot that we're talking about. Now, there are plenty who would destroy the benefit of that knowledge by a lecture. You've got to make lists. You have to pay attention to what you're doing. You know, you've got to grow up. I'm not always going to be there to rescue you.
Right.
But these are not the things that you want to teach your kids. What you want to teach your kids is good timing, good impulse, good timing, good co-creation, good cooperative components, good outcome. Because this is the way thoughts turn to things, you see.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you see, this is what we were talking about earlier, about pulling it back. Esther's got an application on her phone that is a list. She really likes it. And so when she thinks of something, she just enters it. And she can put it in categories. And then when she's in that segment, she just looks to remind herself of the things that she meant to do. And then she just chooses the ones that feel like the most like she wants to do them. And so she's staying on top of things comfortably in that way. But after a little while of letting that list lead her around by the nose, and it does, it's a very demanding thing. She puts it in and she knows it's there.
Always.
And it is always there. And when she looks, it says, do me, do me, do me. It doesn't say, what do you feel like doing? And so your son could have been more efficient, could have been following a list, could have had a checklist. And there are many people who will speak to the importance of that, especially if you have a lot of moving parts that you're attending to. But if you are turning your power over to the list instead of to your vortex and your inner being, we so want you to hear us when we say, your inner being knows where you are in relationship to everything you want. And there is something so dynamically satisfying about having so many intentions that are bubbling in this vortex and so many cooperative components that are moving all around you, and you moving freely as you were describing yourself to be, so that the impulse that came to you caused you to dovetail. And wasn't that a high? Didn't you feel exhilarated about how that all came about? Didn't you feel more
I've been running on a high for the last hour and a half. I mean, when you get the phone call, you're like smiling, ooh, let's see what happens here. This is going to be all step 5 for the next hour and a half. I got this one.
When you realize that there are things like that and hundreds more of them that all have the ready potential of popping for you, can you imagine what a glorious life experience you have as you move from experience like that to that to that to that to that?
Our dinner conversations have changed from what did you do at the office, Tom, what did you write about, what blah blah blah, to it's all turned into what were your step 5s today? What were those accidental things when you were relaxed where it felt so good that everything worked together?
Yeah. Well, it's delightful to play with all of you, but our delight is exponentially exaggerated when you are in that place where you are consciously recognizing that you are playing.
I play a lot.
Where you're no longer holding yourself or anyone else hostage to your lists or hostage to demands that you've placed upon yourself, but instead you're accepting that the vortex has been created by you and is calling, and that the cooperation of all that is there. And then you chill out, take care of yourself, be nice to yourself, and then watch how the universe tends to you.
I've seen a ripple with the three boys and my wife all cooperating to back off on each other and just let each other tell them what they've learned through the experience, as opposed to jumping in there and saying, you should have done this, you should have done that. And over the last 5 years since we've been listening to you, I've seen such an ebb and flow where people just late in the evening are telling you about a massive experience, and it all worked out, and they're just chilling. It's just great, as opposed to saying, where it used to be, you should have done this. There's no more should-haves.
Another thing that you're coming to be aware of, and it's an important thing to insert here, is that sometimes when you're in that flow and you receive an impulse about something, that others who aren't up to speed with you, who don't understand your relationship between where you are and where you want to be, see it as a misstep, when, since it's an impulse that's coming from your inner being, it may be walking right into a situation that could be deemed even a problem, that causes a clarity of asking that is supporting so many other things that you want. We've been saying to Esther, understand, but don't try to explain. Understand, but don't try to explain. Because as she understands, then she's in that pure energy place. But when she tries to explain it to somebody else that's not there, then the energy gets wonky, and then she finds herself getting defensive, and then she's not in that receptive mode now either.
Oh, yes. I spent years doing that, where I was trying to explain to people, why did you homeschool your kids? And I said, because they were having great adventures and it all worked out. It started as an experiment and now it's rocking. And it's impossible to explain to someone who's have a completely different life experience how pure it is for a kid to just live in a project all day and just be thoroughly happy.
That's a perfect analogy to what we were speaking of someone else having different opinions. And isn't it nice that you can live in a world with infinite different opinions and you still thrive? And isn't it nice to know that you live in a world with this myriad of opinions and beliefs and intentions, and that everyone can still thrive?
Oh yeah, 20 years later, everything worked out perfectly.
You can thrive in your differences, and so can they. And that's where the not trying so hard to explain it to them. Because so often, in the wanting to explain it to them, the implication is, you need something that you don't have, and I'm going to give it to you right now. Really good. Something more?
Yeah, actually, the Abe in my world has been an evolution. It started about 5 years when I started getting into it, but about 3 years ago, I started writing. Now, this adventure we had with the kids was massive, and it took us on a path where the kids were rock stars, literally rock stars.
They had less resistance on their path.
Oh, every day they were just free-flowing,
Yeah.
and which created great experiences.
Yeah, little monsters.
And I was asked, well, in a way, yeah, kind of uncontrollable in their enthusiasm. So I've been asked at least 100 times by parents, hey, you should write about what you did. But I felt completely uncomfortable writing about myself.
Well, one of the reasons that you still feel a little uncomfortable about it is because of what we just talked about it. Mm-hmm. Understand it, but don't try to explain it.
I've stopped, except here.
Here's the thing. We're not saying don't write about it. We think writing about it...
I'm way past that point of not writing about it. I've written about it. But before I interrupt
this
you,
is the piece that we just want to stick in here, and then we'll hear you. Take no regard to how it is received by those who don't understand. And understand that there are those who have been asking, which is why you received the impulse to write it down. Mm-hmm. And just trust that those who are ready will find their way, and don't spend any time trying to explain it to anyone else. Okay.
I took one of your suggestions about imagining the room full of those cooperative components who wanted to help me write, and I decided to take a third-party view. In other words, write story as opposed to about me. I could easily drive a similar story to it. And before long, it was as if the room was crowded with all sorts of people who wanted to add components to the story. Yeah. And it was as if the thing was writing itself. I
Yeah.
ended up over a 16-month period writing many hours a day, and it just turned out terrific, the first draft. And now I'm in the editing mode and just learning so much about that. But who I was 5 years ago is completely different because of these extra components that show up every morning in the room and right along with
Well,
me.
you're different now than when you walked up here.
Oh, every
In
day.
other words, because the evolution of that which this combination of being has never been before into all of the universe. And so the
Yeah.
universe is expanded as a result of this brief conversation. And so nothing stands still. That is the only thing that has the potential of tripping you up in the unfolding of this book, because as you've been moving through time, there's a tendency to want to stand now and go back and rework what happened before. Let it be what it was, because it was what it was and it is what it is, and it's
When I
it's a
trust,
perfect
everything
unfolding.
goes better.
Yeah,
Yes,
really good,
that's it.
really good.
Perfect. Thank you.